The night my brand new truck finally arrived, I thought the worst I'd have to deal with was keeping it spotless from pollen and dust. Instead, I woke up the next morning to find it boxed out of its own assigned parking spot by none other than HOA President Karen herself. What she didn't know was that I had access to some very unconventional heavy machinery for my job, and let's just say, watching her Lexus dangling in the air from the arms of a forklift was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Moving into a new home is supposed to bring peace of mind, not headaches from an overbearing HOA. My wife Hannah and I had just settled into a townhome community outside Denver. The place was nice mountain views, quiet streets, and for the first time in years, a garage and a reserved parking spot with my unit number painted in big white letters. That reserved spot mattered to me more than most people might think. Had saved for nearly 2 years to buy my dream truck, a cherry red Ford F250 diesel. Lifted just right, polished to a shine. That truck wasn't just transportation. It was a symbol of the overtime shifts, the sacrifices, and the sweat I'd poured into my career as a construction foreman. So when the HOA president, who I'd barely even met, decided my spot was hers for the taking, she ignited a battle she never could have predicted. We met Karen, not her real name, but it fits on Mauvin Day. She strutted over in oversized sunglasses, clipboard under her arm, the little yappy Pomeranian tugging at a pink leash. "Welcome to our community," she said, stretching the word "our" like it was private property she owned outright. "The HOA president, which means I handle all the little issues around here." Hannah smiled politely. "Nice to meet you. We're excited to be here." Karen's eyes flicked to the moving truck. Just so you know, trailers aren't allowed overnight. I'll give you until sundown, but rules are rules." That was the first red flag. We'd only been unloading for 2 hours, and she was already barking rules at us. I bit my tongue. It was easier to just nod and let her march off, yappy dog in tow, but I had no idea how far her entitlement stretched. A week later, my new truck was delivered. I parked it in my freshly painted spot, Unit 18, and felt a swell of pride. That pride lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, I came out, with a cup of coffee in hand, ready to admire the sunrise bouncing off my truck's hood. Karen's Lexus RX sat there, gleaming smugly like it belonged. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe she meant to park in the visitor spot next to mine. So I left a polite note on her windshield. "Hi, this is Unit 18's reserved spot. Please don't park here. Thanks, simple. Respectful." When I came home that evening, the note was crumpled on my doormat. The second time, I found her Lexus there again. This time, I knocked on her door. She opened it halfway, a little Pomeranian yapping like a smoke alarm. "Karen, hi. Just a reminder, that's my assigned spot. Could you?" She cut me off with a laugh. "Oh, honey, the board has discussed this. That spot is better suited for board members. You have a perfectly fine garage." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Excuse me? My garage is for storage. That spot is mine." "What?" "It's painted with my number." Karen waved a manicured hand. "The HOA bylaws state the board has discretion over common property. Consider it reassigned." And then she shut the door. That's when I realized this wasn't ignorance. This was a power trip. For the next 2 weeks, it was war, I documented. Every instance with photos time-stamped, clear shots of her Lexus squatting in my spot. I emailed the HOA board, only to find she was the board. The vice president and secretary were her 2 friends, both equally dismissive. One email reply said, "If you have complaints, please bring them to the next HOA meeting. Otherwise, respect board decisions." Translation: "We run this place. Sit down and shut up." But here's what Karen didn't know. Wasn't the type to roll over. My job as a construction foreman gave me access to forklifts, telehandlers, and all sorts of heavy machinery. And conveniently, we were working on a site just 10 minutes away, so I hatched a plan. It was a Friday night. Karen had once again parked her Lexus in my spot before disappearing into her unit for wine night with her friends. At 9 p.m., making sure the coast was clear, I drove one of the smaller forklifts from the job site over to the complex. It wasn't subtle. But at that hour, most neighbors were already inside. I lined up the forks under her Lexus, gently lifted, and just like that, her car rose off the pavement. Tires dangling helplessly. The sight was glorious. I rolled her car across the lot and deposited it neatly still intact into the visitor lawn area near the dumpster. Perfectly safe, no scratches, it's just not in my spot. Then I parked my truck back where it belonged and went to bed grinning. At 7 a.m., the screaming started. Who did this? Meg. Karen's voice echoed through the courtyard. I peeked out the blinds and nearly laughed out loud. Her Lexus sat tilted on the grass like a misplaced toy. She was pacing circles, phone pressed to her ear, dog barking at her heels. By the time I went outside with my coffee, she had half the neighborhood gathered. You, she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me. You vandalized my car? I sipped my coffee. No vandalism here. Your car looks fine, just not in my spot anymore. Her face turned crimson. This is criminal. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said calmly. I've got every picture showing your car parked illegally in my spot for weeks. Want me to show the officers? That shut her up for about 5 seconds. Then she screamed something about abusive machinery and stormed back inside. Sure enough. Half an hour later, 2 squad cars pulled up. The officers knocked on my door. It's polite but clearly annoyed. Sir, we got a complaint that you illegally moved someone's car with construction equipment. Is that true? I nodded. Yes, officers. I moved it out of my assigned parking spot. I didn't damage it. I've got photos and HOA paperwork proving it's my spot. One officer rubbed his temples. So you're telling me this is a parking dispute exactly? Kieran burst out of her unit, screeching, "Arrest him!" You put my life in danger. The cop sighed. Ma'am, you weren't in the vehicle, correct? Of course not. Then there's no danger. And no damage. This is civil, not criminal. I showed them my documentation. The officer glanced at it and nodded. Looks like he's in the right. Ma'am, this isn't his fault. If you keep parking in his spot, you could be towed by an actual tow company. Jaw dropped like she'd swallowed a lemon. That should have been the end. But Karen wasn't done. She tried to push an emergency motion through the HOA to fine me for reckless use of machinery. But the story had spread through the neighborhood by then. Suddenly people weren't scared of her anymore. One neighbor actually laughed during the meeting. Honestly, Karen, watching your Lexus get forklifted was the best entertainment we've had all year. Others started sharing their own grievances and reasonable fines, invasive demands. Petty rules by the end of the meeting. The vote to keep her as president failed. She was ousted, replaced by a much more reasonable neighbor named Miguel. And my spot, permanently secured, no more arguments. Karen sulked for weeks after losing her throne. Her Lexus never touched my spot again. The best part? Miguel pushed through a motion to install security cameras on the lot so if anyone ever tried to steal spots again, there'd be video-proof dot. And every time I drove past that dumpster corner, couldn't help but chuckle, remembering the night. Her luxury SUV dangled helplessly from the forks of my machine. She wanted to flex her power. But in the end, all she managed to do was expose herself as a bully and give the entire neighborhood one unforgettable show.